if you stumbled upon this talk, my name is Marcella, and my aim is to bring awareness to key figures within the art world that focus on East Central European art market, or are East Europeans themselves and their contribution. Today, I have the honor to welcome Maria Bojan, who is a curator, art advisor, a writer with more than 25 years of experience in East European art space. She played a crucial role in promoting contemporary Romanian artists, also historical artists from Eastern Europe. Since 2008, Maria runs her own art platform, MB Art Agency. She curated a number of large-scale international exhibitions, such as Performing History, the Romanian Pavilion at 54th Venice Biennale. Maria also is member of International Association of Art Critics and Association of Curators of Contemporary Art. For 5 years, Maria was a founding member of the Russian and Eastern Europe Acquisition Committee at the Tate Modern, also a member of a board of trustees of Museum Baldianzi, Administration Council of the Contemporary Art Museum, also Board of Advisors of the Riga International Biennale of Contemporary Art, and the chairman of European Art East Foundation, London, working on programs and supporting artists from region of Eastern Europe within major contemporary art events. Thank you, Maria, for accepting the invitation for the interview.
Thank you so much, Marcella. Thank you.
Of course. Before I start talking about the current projects that you are working on, I would like to embark on the time of your early career and how you discovered your calling and also your motivation behind being involved within the art world.
It was not so difficult. First of all, because I come from an artistic family. My father was a sculptor and my mother was an art historian and a museum director. And I studied art, and later on I did some additional studies of museology and management of exhibition and art history and all sorts of courses that helped me during my career. But it was not, they were not the studies that, revealed my call, so to say. It was my feeling that what I can do the best is to collaborate with artists who have the same understanding about art like me. And this is something that led to amazing friendships and also very consistent projects and long collaborations with most of the artists I had the privilege to work with.
And you worked as a curator in a fine art museums in Transylvania and Cultural Foundation in Bucharest. How does that experience curved your curatorial philosophy? And also I want to know if the structure of the museum in Eastern Europe is living the same structure than in the West, or museums are different?
I used to work 7 years as a curator for temporary exhibition at the Cluj Art Museum. Then it was called the Art Museum of Transylvania. Now it is just Cluj Art Museum. And later on, I got the director of a corporate foundation, which established a cultural center in Cluj. The corporate foundation was in Bucharest, and the art center with a gallery, the library, and all the operations were in Cluj, which is the capital of Transylvania so far. During my time as a curator at the museum in Cluj, I had the opportunity not only to meet, but to organize a few interesting exhibitions for young artists. And I was rather privileged because they have given me free hand to invite and to do exhibitions that now, after almost 30 years, it looks like they were quite pioneering, because we did I did lots of exhibitions that were completely unusual and sometimes highly criticized at the time. But now I feel very proud that I dared to do it. And maybe it was a kind of unconsciousness, or, you have this kind of impulses when you are young. You just do things that you consider that they are good. And later on, I had this opportunity to structure a little bit my activity and to create a program out of it. But one of the things I'm very proud of, it is the program for the young artists. So I have initiated a fund of supporting young artists that just graduated art universities, and they were getting production money and spaces for exhibition and other support for getting all sorts of facilities for making new projects and special exhibitions or commissions or whatever they wanted. They could apply, and they were judged by a very independent jury. Yeah. And this is how an entire generation of artists emerged on the art scene in Cluj, and among which Ciprian Mureșan, who did the two very first solo shows, and two productions that we have done together. Then Adrian Genie, who had his very first exhibition in, I think it was in 2002, or yes, 2002. Mm-hmm. And Victor Mann in 1999. Mircea Cantor had a group exhibition in 2000. So I thought that it was a very good platform because they managed to make their first solo shows in order to achieve something else, because also your country have to support you as an artist. It's not only that as an Eastern European artist, you have to go necessarily to the West to legitimize yourself. That was then. Nowadays, I think that it's not such a pressure anymore, because we learned a lot more about the Western art, and the Westerners learn also a little bit more about the Eastern European art. So to a certain extent, there is no need to make any demonstration. But coming back to the program with young artists, I believe that as a curator, the most important thing is to dare to believe in new artists and dare to look to things which are not common and not to follow the traces left by others, or to get immediately in the footsteps of some other colleagues or people who are trendsetters. So I never believed in establishment, because it's a construction. It's a construction that it's all the time there to be deconstructed and reconstructed. So I believed in individuals who were exceptional in all senses. Of course, that in our profession, you have criteria, like in all the professions. And I like to believe that even now, when it is so difficult, because you have Instagram, you have all this social media, and you have also the artists promoting themselves, with an expert eye sees immediately what is good and what is new, what it expresses, and so on. So basically, it's lots of noise nowadays, but the criteria remain the same.
Maria, how do you evaluate a talent? Because the names you have just mentioned and the artists that you have built, it is not by an accident. So when you stand in front of the work of art, or you get to have a conversation and get to know the artist, how do you evaluate, I want to pick you and work with you?
Usually you don't pick an artist or a work just in vain or in abstract. So if you are invited to do exhibitions, or you make a program for an institution and so on, all these programs are meant to serve to a greater public. So depending on the situation in which this artist should be exhibited, you make a programming, and the programming should have a degree of exceptionality in it. So it's not about how I evaluate an artist. It is more about what that artist have to say. And if that artist has to say something in a universal manner or in a new visual language, or it has something outspoken or crazy, or it challenges through political convictions or through all sorts of other things. So there is no recipe for this kind of. You cannot evaluate. You can evaluate only artists that whose work is already part of the history. But contemporary art has its own dynamic. And it is just, you can just give incentive to the artist to dare to be more themselves, and not to look left and right, just to be original. If they are original, after a complete cycle is completed, then they will remain there. Their work is valid and legitimized by all the people who are understanding all the meanings which is comprised in those works.
Yeah, I'm so glad you've answered this question, because such an important point. And I think that you can look at so many interviews and everybody keeps on saying something different. And it's important to know that we have to listen to the people who are within the art world historically, who works with artists and so forth. I would love to touch up now on curators and art critics. I would love to know what makes legitimate curator and art critic, and what is their role today?
It's a very difficult, it's a very good question, but also a difficult one. Okay. First of all, because I have the feeling that the role of art critic has been abolished once that society started to require all sorts of censorship at this moment in the art critic environment and also curatorial environment. And that is limiting, because in the end, art had to be all times extremely challenging. And if it is challenging, it cannot please everybody. Somebody is there to criticize. So to a certain extent, the public is now exercising the role of the critic, and not anymore the art critics. So the art critics are making a kind of an exercise which is not enough, because in the moment when you don't have the courage to say about things and about art and about what you believe, when society is not accepting your opinions, and then you have to do this self-censorship, then people are not talking anymore, they are not saying anything, and then basically you just have an ocean of artistic expressions. And then what I see is that the marketing plays a role. Who better the marketing, who better the visibility, it becomes a hype. So basically, the art world is employing now all sorts of strategies that are coming from the fashion world and from other worlds, cinema world or whatever. And advertising is part of the deal, or marketing is part of the deal. But for me, sometimes too much marketing is also working against. So we can make an evaluation on historical basis. You will have all the time a game, let's not say power games, but they are the games of the art world in which somebody tries to establish and to validate category of appreciation, or symbolic capital for certain artists, and then this kind of, if that person knows how to establish those category of appreciation, then you have people who are looking to that artist in the same way, in a way, because it's a kind of directing the attention toward a certain artist. So this is what museums and curators are doing. However, in the end, museums are led by people, and people have their own tastes, and they have their own programs, and they have their own opinions about art. So I think it's also good because it's a variety of proposals all over the places. You can see something interesting or less interesting. It depends also who is running that institution and what kind of spirit is animating that organization. The curatorial world, however, suffers also because in the last years, the curatorial studies were very much directed toward a discursive manner of dealing with art, which, in my opinion, it became since a while rather exterior to the art world. So what I see a kind of not a separation, a division between what the artists themselves are proposing. And I'm looking all the time to younger artists, what kind of medium they are using, and why very young artists are returning to painting or to ceramic or to sculpture and not doing more conceptual art or more video art. And I just realized that they do what they feel the need to do. And then the curatorial world cannot come and impose a discursive paradigm on something that it's a need for them. It's the other way around. So the curators should look and understand what is the need at the moment and what is the zeitgeist of the moment, or if not now, at least 10 years ago or 20 years ago, trying to understand all this. And of course, this is not an easy thing to do. But on the other hand, to make speculations and sophisms and all sorts of bring a little bit a combination of literature and philosophy and discursive thinking in this area, sometimes it works if it is an exceptional curator, if it is an exceptional thinker, it's always working. But so far, what I have seen, and this, especially with some young curators, is there is more and more a tendency to use a kind of wooden language, curatorial language, which is very specific, with some keywords. But in the end, it says nothing about what we are seeing and what we are experiencing at this moment in the world. And I just got the book of Robert Storr, who is one of the critics that dare to remain critic until the end. And it gave me lots of pleasure because I just realized that in order to mean something for the art world, you need to formulate an opinion. Even some other people are criticizing you, or so if you don't formulate opinion, if you make a step behind, then you are not a participant, you are just a passive person who is waiting that others will finally assess what you mean or what you do in the art world. And that is for me unacceptable. In the end, you have to come with your opinion, and you have to assume the responsibility of your choices. And if you do it, and if one or two artists make a career or get better visibility because of that, then the mission is accomplished.
Do you feel the curators have created this language, that they created this disconnect between the audience and the academia of the art world?
We cannot generalize. I mean, what I see that there are some very good curators in major museums like Tate and also at Pompidou and so on. But I also see that there is lots of pressure to change their discourse. There is no need for that. What we as a curator, we have to look to artists. Artists, we are serving the art. and not the other way around. So basically, we have to nourish ourselves with the meanings that are contained in the art world, we are in the art pieces we are working with, or with the stories, the content delivered by artists. So art world, it exists because the artists are there. They are creating the art world. And in order to have museums, curators, art critics, you need to write, to make exhibition, and to do things about something. But as we are living in a world which is upside down, sometimes certain people who are rulers of the art world, are more entitled to establish those category of appreciations, like in comparison with others. So basically, it is a battle at all levels between who is establishing what is should be seen. You see, for instance, I just give an example. Tate Modern started to promote women artists and older women artists that were overlooked. So it became a tendency in the whole world. Then the Black Lives Matter started. So now the Black artists are extremely appreciated and in demand. There is a kind of agenda that follows some decisions taken by key players in the art world. What I see and my experience reveals that the art world is far too complex to generalize, or there are so many levels, so many layers, so many meanings. That in the end, what it counts, if there is something universal and at the same time very new in terms of artistic expression, and that is making good art. So that means that everyone in every corner of the world could grasp that specific knowledge and that specific content which the artist is willing to express, or not only willing, but he has the urge to express it. Artists, sometimes they don't know why they are doing certain things. They are expressing something which is a truth which is bigger than themselves, And good curators are the ones that they are understanding those truths, because they are experienced in decoding all these visual languages.
You're the first person that I am aware of that started the model of art agency, and you've started in 2008. Why art agency? Why didn't you go then to traditional art gallery system?
Because I'm not a gallerist, because I have always been a curator, and I have always been a specialist in certain fields. So for instance, when I was a curator at the museum in Cluj, I researched interbellic art, and the Romanian historical avant-garde with Victor Brauner and Marcel Ianco and Tristan Tzara, etc. The Dada. Not many people know that Tristan Tzara and the Dada was born in Romania, and Victor Brauner was born in Romania, and he was active at the beginning of the last century and created there. One of the most important pieces were done still in Romania. Later on, their creation evolved and so on. My expertise started to grow more and more into understanding the Eastern European phenomenon, because it's a phenomenon. It's not like many people are saying, yes, but why you are talking about Eastern European art and we were never talking about Western European art. What is Eastern European art? So Eastern European art is art made across the Iron Curtain, an area which was the biggest social experiment of the last century. We have all in common a history which in every country was different, but somehow we were aligned to the same ideals and to the same common values and so on, even we didn't like it ourselves. Or this is how my mother had precisely the same type of destiny like Magdalena Bakanovic, being born in aristocratic families. Communists came, everything has been confiscated, they were fighting for their existence, all the families were in prison, and so on and so on. This is something that create a connection, and it's not only with Romania and Poland. You have the same in Czech Republic, you have the same in other places. It is actually a history of not only of oppression.
Yeah.
It's more than oppression. It was an area of experiments. They have experimented with the masses, the crowds. It was a horrible crime, in fact, because it fragmented our development as countries and as individuals. What we have in common, it is this fragmented history. And it is that we were all the time brought back, and then we didn't know how to negotiate our own power. So nowadays, as you see, Eastern Europe became more aware of itself, and many countries, they are not following. And in reality, we are talking about a history of domination and a history of obtaining, the Westerners obtained all the time what they wanted, including putting entire Eastern Europe historically outside of, even we were part of Europe, it was a device, it was the other part of Europe. It's a very interesting dynamic because it's more about our relationship with history, and the history which is performing at every level, because we cannot escape of that. It's part of us. It is like the Holocaust survivors. So the Holocaust is part of the life of those people forever. So communism is for those who survived it or who lived in it, part of them. You cannot simply wipe out and just embrace a Western approach. No, you have to process, you have to understand what's going on. So that's why artists such as Magdalena Bakanovic that I have mentioned are so important, or Ana Lupas, or Ion Grigorescu in Romania, or Dora Maurer in Hungary, or like Juli Knifer in Croatia, and so on. So each country has its own local, but the difference between Western art and Eastern European art is that while in the West, the artists dared to embrace positions, in the East, they were looking for meanings, for higher calls. They were doing art out of necessity, doing art as a mode of surviving this kind of mental oppression, because in the end, communism limited our lives. These limitations imposed a completely different mental framework. So we cannot be compared with the other ones because we lived in different conditions, and our art was born out of different necessities.
What do you wish that would happen to East European art today? Would you like to suggest that maybe museum would embrace and look deeper in our history, curate shows in the Western world in order to help understanding? What would be the recipe, the helping pill, if I may?
Marcella, there is no recipe.
Mm-hmm.
So what I wish and I aim is to give to the Eastern European artists, wherever they are, the feeling that they are not inferior to the other ones. They are just as good as the rest. So, and it depends on them how they approach their future. And of course, that the biggest problem that we have in Eastern Europe are the institutions. So the institutions, the museums and all these archives and so on, they were not reformed. And now maybe at the pressure of the social media and also of the critical reception of certain things by a wider public due to social media, there is an increased pressure to reprofessionalize the institutional art world in these countries. So the problem is that this institution didn't make their job well. And because of that, the private art world, small organizations, foundations, and galleries, they were replacing basically the role of this institution. And then, of course, because they didn't have the budgets and the support that you need for doing these activities of reevaluation, lots of important artists in the Eastern Europe were presented in the West by big museums and then went back to their respective countries and being finally accepted. So, but I have to tell you, I live in the Netherlands and here is the same. Here you need to go to London or to New York or to Berlin in order to get more legitimacy, you know, and visibility as an artist. So there is no clear path, and it depends. But the biggest problem that we have in Eastern Europe is that museums and all these state institutions should be reorganized according to the needs and align a little bit to the Western ones. So, and because of that, we have a major handicap. And we should not make a confusion between the art and the institution. The art is very good, and it has been always very good, even it was so different from the one in the Western world, but it was good. The problem is that the people who should promote those artists and make exhibitions and understand, they were not at the same level with the art and the artists.
You have also started a new venture with your daughter, and it is called Diffusion. And you are currently located online.
You are asking me about MB Art Agency. So MB Art Agency, it's a platform for curatorial projects, you know, and I just wanted to let myself open to collaborate directly with artists for several projects, and not necessarily commercial projects, but my long collaboration with Ulay, which materialized in a book and in several exhibitions and so on, was possible due to the agency and to the fact that we represented this artist as an agent, but not as an agent like a gallerist, because we were not necessarily selling pieces, you know, but we offered the expertise for other museums and other people to understand the amplitude and the volume of the work of this artist. And this experience led, of course, to other collaboration. And then when my daughter graduated the university and she studied media, she said that I would like to do something that connect art and media. And so the idea of this website popped up. So it's like 2 years ago we started to work on this project, and then the pandemic came, and the website was actually ready 1 month before the pandemic started. She wanted to start small by working with artists that she knows personally. And now the site will be extended to entire Eastern Europe. So we started the collaboration with Michal Korman and we from Slovakia, and we have some other artists in mind from Poland and Hungary. So we are very much studying now all these fields. Unfortunately, we cannot travel to see the works in person. So that's why we delayed a little bit. And but I am just a background. I guided a little bit my daughter to find her own voice, and I'm very happy to see that we don't agree many times, and she's right most time, and I'm very proud of this.
Yeah. And will you, because now work's living online, and are you planning to then, when it's possible, have the exhibitions with these contemporary artists also in a physical space?
We are waiting for that moment. We had these projects of making a website and to offer a platform to some artists to be visible in every corner of the world. I believe that you cannot understand art fully unless you see it and you experience it,
Yeah.
because it's an experience. It's not only I see all these books about collecting and about art fairs and about, no, it's an experience. Everybody is experiencing in a different way. We want to make exhibitions, even if it will be maybe one or two per year, but not, I don't think that this online culture will, let's not confuse the things. Information is one thing, and the experiencing art is something else. To have information, it doesn't mean that you have an experience. This way of relating to art is extremely important for those who really count as players in the art world. And you have to see, you have to understand, you have to feel. Of course, that all this information can be hosted online, and it's very good, and it's a competition now who is presenting better and who is attracting the attention. But again, it's pure information, and it's not like you have on the street two billboards and you look only to the bigger billboard. Yes.
And you are extremely accomplished, and I was wondering, asking you one personal question, and that it would be, what qualities do you believe you hold that made you successful in such wide range of pursuits?
I don't know. I think that first of all, I was extremely convinced in certain situations that I was right and others were wrong.
Mhm.
And I dared to challenge the establishment all the time.
Yeah.
Even they hated me, I challenged them. So that's one. Second is that it was a kind of courage that I don't know from where it comes. Maybe when you are young, you are brave without knowing it. You just do things without caring too much about what other people are saying. Third, it's also something that it exists in me because being born to a family of artists and of people who were busy with the art world, I learned a lot about this due to my father and due to my mother and due to the fact that the visual culture in which I was emerged, I developed as a child and later as a student was very complex. I met lots of people and I learned about them, and I saw naturally I came to a kind of understanding. All of us active in the art world develop something like that. So I don't know if this means quality is different from the rest, but I believe that as a curator, the most important quality is generosity. So you need to be generous and you need to understand that what you do is actually serving the art and not the other way around. And I like to say this because this is a lesson that I learned a long time ago, actually. Like in 2008, I made an exhibition at Casino Luxembourg, and the director of that time, Enrico Lughi, told me, Maria, we are the servants of art and not the artists, the servants of the curators. And as long as we don't understand that this is the case, you cannot develop a career and have results in the art world. Because artists are all the time having something more important to say than you. You just have to understand what they are saying and mediate and present their content in such a way that the broader public is understanding what's in it.
Essentially, you're the bridge.
Exactly. It is like the editors, the books editors. So they are not writing the books. It's guidance, tendency to to let curators be themselves creative like the artist, it was kind of interesting in the past. But nowadays, it's not. It's also because the whole paradigm has changed. It is the pandemic brought also a new look to life, a new approach to everything. You, as a curator, you come all the time after the creation has been accomplished. Sometimes, of course, you can commission things, you can discuss with artists, you can do some collaborations that are outstanding and so on. But usually you just take a content which is there, open to interpretation, which is open to be shown to the public, which is good enough or generous enough or outstanding enough to challenge people and bring them to the museum or to galleries, because we have the institutional art world and the art market, and they between these two entities, it is a fracture at the moment. Market is following different criteria, different tendencies, and so on, while the institutional art world have completely a completely different dynamic. It's also much slower because you need to work with programming, and basically it's difficult that a museum is following immediately something which is outstanding or interesting on the art market. The art world is reinventing itself all the time. It is not allow anybody to swallow it completely or to instrumentalize it completely.
Would you like to share, going back to history, some of the curving experiences or lessons you have had in your career?
When I was still in Romania, I was part of a group that was very close to the paradigm of the 80s. So basically, they were the poets and the writers that later on put the basis of the new departments at universities, and not only the Faculty of Letters, but also in art universities and so on. So I really like now to look at those years, because we were just working and we were never thinking to ourselves, to promote ourselves, like, hey, here I am, I'm doing this, I'm contributing to this, and so on. So when I see now the young artists and also the young curators that in the moment when they start doing something, it's all the time an Instagram post or something else, it is like, here I am, I have rediscovered the wheel or the egg or the world or whatever. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting to see this, because I'm part of that generation which doesn't like publicity and marketing, in self-marketing, so to say. So that's why there is less to be spoken about from people of my generation, because it's not important for us to speak about this. Second, of course, that there are amazing encounters and amazing artists that from whom you learn a lot. So beside Ulay, who was one of my best friends and one of the artists I work the closest with, had a very important encounter at an how to say, intellectual level with Thomas Hirschhorn, and I learned a lot from him. I also had good understanding on what Anthony Gormley proposed a long time ago when I collaborated with him. And then, of course, there are all these encounters with different artists from Eastern Europe that were telling me different stories and histories and so on. Yeah. And my encounter with Magdalena Bakanovic was very brief, because I met her 2 years before she died, but she was already very sick. So she was not really able to communicate. Yeah. But somehow I had a communication with her work, and it's amazing. I understood immediately what it is about. Mm-hmm. But all the things that I did got such a visibility, like Adrian Genier. I still remember that I got a criticism from a very important colleague of mine from Bucharest saying, "Oh, Maria, you got crazy. You are exhibiting dilettantes in space of the art center I was running." But I was sure that this guy is going to make not a career, but a huge career, because the presentation he made to us when he requested the grant for exhibition and for promotion was perfect.
Yeah.
Everything was, he had all those qualities that an artist needs to have in order to succeed. And not only him, but also Ciprian Mureșan and some others. So in the end, it's also a matter of intelligence and how committed you are to go further. So most of the artists who do not understand that not only art world, the life has changed. You cannot expect from others to see you. You need to do a lot yourself in order to be seen.
If we go into the detail into what were you impressed by, what exactly has he delivered in the program that you thought, wow?
Adrian Genier was, first of all, extremely polite, extremely concise. He made a very good presentation of his own work, and he knew exactly what he wants.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is, I had a few collaborations, but with Genia was perfect, really, in the sense that I said, okay, you don't need our help. You need only basically the space and so on. And the exhibition has had success. Even it was not a big exhibition, but it was his very first solo exhibition. And I really believe that even he is not considering those works important at that moment. It was an important stage because it represented a transition from him leaving the school and him becoming an artist with his own voice. He had his own voice since then. It was a kind of drive which I like it. But it's not only with Adrian Genier, Mircea Cantor had the same. Victor Mann even more than the two of them. Yeah. Victor Mann is the one who created actually the whole phenomenon, the whole return of the painting department of the Cluj University to figurative painting. It all started with the revolution of Victor Mann when he criticized his teachers, when he challenged them. And I really believe that Victor Mann is not only the most important Romanian painter of his generation, but one of the most important painters of his generation in the whole world and not only in Romania. Yeah, he's a mind. And he's not only a mind, but also somebody who is understanding painting also from a historical perspective and is able to deliver something which is very much himself. All these artists are creating for different reasons. And because of that, nobody can generalize. But as long as what they do is sincere and it is original, posing questions, but not any kind of questions, existential questions, or if not existential questions, if they do not pose new challenges. In all terms, it can be visual challenges, intellectual challenges, medium-like, or whatever. This type of qualities are essential. Not only now, they have always been essential, but now it is more difficult because of the huge quantity of marketing, which is polluting. On one hand, it gives access to everybody, but it also creates bigger problem for others to detect what is good and what is bad. Because you can be seduced by certain marketing tricks, by good exhibitions made by very big galleries and so on. But then 20 years after, you just realize that it was just marketing talk and not something so substantial that survives the time. That's actually the challenge as a curator, to detect what is important. So basically, you have to look to not to only one artist, but to many artists, and all these art fairs and the biennales and so on are there to offer you the possibility to diagonally, obliquely map out what's going on, and then you suddenly feel what the feeling of the time, the things, the ideas that are emerging in.
Before I ask you my last question, I'd like to acknowledge you for the amazing work that you have done and you continue to be doing. I'm really pleased that we had this 1 hour or so conversation, because the information that you have shared with me are so vital and so important for today, for not only the people that work in the art world as a, that circle around the artist, but also artists themselves, because one ecosystem needs the other. And so that is extremely important. So thank you so much for sharing all that wisdom. Last question to you would be, if you have any goals and dreams, or maybe different spheres you would like to take your career to, or maybe some goals that you haven't talked about or hadn't had a chance to express yet.
My goal is to return a little bit to the basics. I mean, once you get older, life becomes more simple, in the sense that you just realize what is important and what is not. And for me, what is important is to go back to the roots, go back to the art. I want to go back and visiting studios and understanding a little bit what the new generation is doing, and the younger generations. And further, I have lots of projects on my plate, and some exhibitions, some books, some other kind of publications, and so on. So it's not about that I wish to make something bigger or greater or whatever. I am just in that maybe now is the time to go deeper to certain things which I never had the time to look at. And the pandemic helped me to read more, to do more research. And suddenly I just realized that what I need to do is just go and visit as many artists possible. And I'm really hoping that once the restrictions are over, I could travel a little bit to Hungary and to Czech Republic and Poland to continue my research there. I'm not part of those curators who have big aims, because I learned in 30 years of experience that big aims are, how you say, subsumated to big ideals. So better have big ideals than big aims.
Thank you for sharing all your knowledge again, and I hope we get to have a conversation again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.